Virtual board regular session meeting. Do we have any changes to the agenda, item 2.0? No, okay.
No.
Item 3.0, public forum and announcements, public comments. Due to the online meeting format, we request that public comments be submitted via email to the board secretary by 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Statements should be brief and should not reflect adversely on the character, background, or motives of any individual. Commenters wishing to read during the meeting will have up to 3 minutes to speak, and depending on the volume of comments, an overall time limit may be set. Board members will not respond directly to public comments, as this is our time to listen. And for tonight, we have a pretty good volume of comments, so we are going to have it be a 2-minute timer. Rest assured, the board received every comment in its entirety, and we all review them carefully. So if you aren't able to finish your comment, know that we're still receiving the information. So Kamala will time us, and Sarah has graciously agreed to help tag team reading comments with me again this time. So let me get started. First comment, can you read, I want to go back to school. I miss all of my friends. I miss the teachers. Kids need more human interaction. I miss carrying my backpack and my lunchbox. My brother has no friends in my neighborhood, and he is in the house doing nothing. I miss seeing the teachers in the hall when I'm going to my class. It's kind of embarrassing when you have a problem and you have to say it in front of the class instead of walking up to your teacher and asking what you need help on in private. I miss walking in the hallways and seeing all of the art or drawings kids do. That's from Abigail, age 10, and she's in 5th grade. Next is Amy Swanson. Trying to keep my list here. Good evening, my name is Amy Swanson. I'm a middle school teacher at 91 School, and it's time for the teachers and kids who so desire to return to the classroom. Our reputation and standing within society are now at risk, and more importantly, the well-being of students is at grave risk. We cannot continue in this fashion. In March of last year, we were told 15 days to flatten the curve. That has now become a moving target, changing weekly and sometimes daily with no discernible scientific validation. For more than a few children, their only safe place is at school. For some of the kids we serve, the only responsible and caring adult is the one they see at school. Every year, teachers in this district become aware of students who are being abused, and we start the process of safety and justice. We make mandatory reports, we contact the Department of Human Services, we work with law enforcement. We are being told that youth suicide is at an all-time high, as is drug overdoses, and this lockdown is a factor. We need to get back to school. We need to protect our kids. For some kids, the only education they get is the one they receive at the public school. They don't have parents that are involved. In fact, some of our students live in foster homes and group homes. Their parents don't teach them to read and write, we do, and we are supposed to prepare them for adult life to be productive members of society. We are hearing that kids are failing at an all-time high, 25% here or 40% there that have had at least one failing grade. They're failing because our ideal learning and teaching were never meant to be done via Zoom or over email. 40 other states are back to some style of in-person school. Our children are being done a disservice, and we need to step up for them. I'm also a parent, and I don't take safety lightly, but we know a lot more than what we knew 10 months ago. Grocery store checkers, bank employees, dental hygienists, nearly every facet of society has figured out a way to provide in-person service. Why not us? We have all sorts. Okay. So next is Andrew Sampson. Good morning, Kamala. My name is Andrew Sampson, and I work at 91 School. I am emailing to express my opposition to a return to in-person learning. My wife is a teacher and my daughter a 4th grader. In-person learning would be a huge exposure for my family, and we could not allow that for ourselves. Thank you, Andrew Sampson. Ashley Peterson. My name is Ashley Peterson. I'm currently, just making sure she wasn't one of the ones with the one to read. My name is Ashley Peterson. I'm currently a junior at the high school. I'm also a junior class officer involved with leadership and a multi-sport student athlete. I am emailing you all about reopening schools. My peers and I have had to live through distance learning for almost a year now, and mental health issues, and the cause of this is not being back in school. Distance learning is not the same as learning in person. I feel even more stressed with distance learning than I did with in-person learning. I miss seeing my teachers and my friends every day. I miss the social events like dances, football games, and assemblies. We all want to be back in school. In other states, kids have been going to school and playing sports. Statistically, it has been proven that the spread of COVID-19 does not spread through schools and sports. This past weekend, I flew down to Phoenix, Arizona for the biggest soccer tournament in the country. There were over 1,000 people there from all over the country. There was not one COVID case that came out of this event, so please consider allowing us to go back to school. Mental health is a big issue right now, especially during this pandemic. We need to go back to school. It's Ashley Peterson. She's a CHS student. Oh, it's a handwritten note. Sorry, I'm getting a little verklempt. I was just looking at old stuff from my 22-year-old son, and it looks like his handwriting. And it was mailed to us. We have a letter from, must be Blake. Is that right? Yep. This is from Blake Steiskal. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Dear Canby School District, I have been keeping up with the current news and recently heard that Governor Kate Brown has said that school districts in Oregon can open up safely. COVID-19 has been and keeps on affecting everyone's lives, but when we have 99% of survival, it is outrageous opened schools until now. When January comes, schools can either go back on the say of each district. Please ponder on opening school. As a middle schooler, I am doing online school. And through this online school, I have found myself more depressed, less social, and less emotionally stable. So please think about how shutting down schools has and keeps on harming us students. I'm guessing that whoever reads this has been in elementary, middle, and high school. And you know that school also provides social interactions and learning situations for years ahead. For instance, do you remember having friends high-fiving you when they pass you in the halls or any other social interaction? Then you will know it is important. So please try to think of how school has been affecting lots of kids, and that just because we are learning doesn't mean it's the best way to learn. In life, if you do not interact with other people, you can feel lonely, sad, depressed, or even suicidal. So from me to you, please open schools. That's, like I said, Blake Steiskal. So Sarah, I'll do this one and then switch over.
Real quick, Stephanie is in the attendees side.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that, Stephanie. I've been going cross-eyed looking at my computer screen. Make sure that works. Okay. Okay. Hi, Stephanie. Sorry about that. Okay. Let me get back to. So, Sarah, I'll read this one and then I'll kick it to you for a bit. This is from Brooke Toma. Dear Canby School Board, I write this letter with passion in my heart and tears in my eyes. My purpose is to plead for you to do everything you can to get our students safely back in school. We need to have a date to begin to safely return to school. The Lake Oswego School District has set a date to begin to return. The Canby School District should too. Many children around the country are in school. It can be done. I appreciate and value our teachers, and I think they are doing an amazing job. I have seen frustration in both my children and teachers when things don't go smoothly, and they often don't with CDL. My 7th grader is in her bedroom in isolation during her school days. My 4th grader, who is on an IEP, struggles to engage and connect in groups of more than 2 on Zoom calls. This is not healthy. Kids need to be around other kids. Their education and mental health are hanging in the balance. I implore you to get these children back in school where they have the opportunity to meet their maximum potentials. This is not happening for many students with CDL. Let us have a choice to send our children back to school. Not all parents and teachers are afraid to go back. With gratitude, Brooke Toma. All right, Sarah.
Thanks, Angie. Dear Canby School Board, as a family with 3 generations having attended school in the Canby district, I am writing to strongly urge the school board to delay the reopening of in-classroom instruction in Canby. Although I understand the desire to return to normal, nothing has substantially changed since schools closed. In fact, things are worse. The pandemic rages on, vaccines are not widely available nor administered. Our healthcare systems are strained, and we don't have adequate funding and resources for widespread, reliable testing and contact tracing. And to my knowledge, our buildings have not been upgraded. Sending our teachers, staff, and young children back at this time, in my opinion, is reckless and unconscionable, putting our entire community at risk. Please don't use our children as guinea pigs. Respectfully submitted, Deborah Kaufman. Dear Canby School Board, thank you for the opportunity to share my opinion. This week, I received a generic survey to provide input on whether I would like to send my kids back to school for in-person learning. This is an important and emotionally charged decision for many in the community, including myself. Due to this, I am disappointed at the lack of information about what hybrid or in-school might mean prior to asking for a decision. These details, though not finalized, are critical to making an informative decision, helping you get accurate, usable feedback. Key information like how many in-person days a week are we talking about, what happens the other days, and what happens to in-person learning if COVID hits, all need to be made clear to understand the impact to my children's education and my family's ability to manage the accompanying variables, i.e. pickup times, daycare, increased hands-on parent support needed. If your response is we don't have those answers, that is exactly my point. Take an initial stab at it, tell the school community what you're thinking, and then let us make the best decisions for our kids and families. Thank you for your time, Donovan Dooley. Dear Canby School Board, the reason I want real school to start again is because I want to see kids in real life and not just in Zoom. I want to play with friends on the playground. I want to use my lunchbox. I want to see my teacher again and go into my real classroom. I want to go to the library and check out a book. I want to go into the computer lab and learn more about technology. I miss PE and all the other classes. I miss school. I miss my friends. I want to go back to school. Please let me go back to school. From Grady, age 7, 2nd grade. Hello, I am a parent of a student at Caris. I understand the school may be reopening soon and that different plans are being considered for how to bring students back. I was told options include a half day each day for each cohort versus 2 full days per week for each cohort. From a health perspective, as well as convenience logistics, I hope the latter option is chosen. It just doesn't make sense to fill the building with all the students each day when there is another feasible option. The longer interval between different cohorts occupying the same space, the more likely the cohort system is to actually decrease the spread of COVID. I am also writing to express support for bringing students back in stages and giving parents the option of sticking with remote learning, especially if there are vulnerable individuals in their household or immediate circle. Thank you for your consideration, Dr. Gwendy Rise-Ilg. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. We need our kids in school. They cannot get the same education as in person. They are suffering mentally and socially. We need to start. Thank you, Jackie Coleman. Hello, Mr. Goodall. We want our child back in school as soon as possible. Please read the statement in the upcoming school board meeting. Sincerely, Mark and Janice Hagel. I'll do this last one, Angie, and then switch it back over to you. I'm writing to let you know that as a teacher in the district, I am for reopening schools. The sooner the better. It has been proven in multiple other states around the country that it can be done safely. Schools have been open and kids are participating in sports, band, drama, dance, choir, etc., with none to very little transmission of the COVID-19 virus. I teach health and PE, and I'm worried about the mental health of our youth and adults for that matter. The mental health of so many of our students is slipping, and we need to get them back into the classroom for so many reasons. I have an 11th grader and an 8th grader in the district, and I see it every day, not only in my own child, but their friends and my students. Kids need to be in the classroom where they can get a better education. Mental health needs to be met. They can get social emotional support and a chance to be a normal kid. All of this screen time is not healthy for anyone. I am confident we as a district can do this safely and would like to see it done soon. Please give all of us parents, staff, and the community some guidance and some dates to expect schools to reopen. This year's seniors are running out of time. They have had their senior year ripped away from them. Spring sports and prom were taken away from them last year as juniors. Are you going to do the same this year? If schools don't open, these seniors will never get to experience going to a prom, graduation, senior night for sports and activities, and their last chance to enjoy being a kid with their friends. Thank you, Jennifer Peterson, PE health teacher, Canby High School.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, we'll continue on. And I'll just, there are two more I'm going to read, and then Marjorie De Loretta, I think, I'm hoping I'm not totally mispronouncing it. You'll be up in a couple of minutes, so if you're listening, just know that I'll be allowing you to talk here in a few minutes. I work at a school because I, like all school staff, care greatly about children in our community. That is why I'm deeply concerned about the governor's decision to change the mandatory metrics for reopening schools to advisory. It is well documented that children get COVID and transmit it to others. With our COVID numbers rising daily, opening schools will only add to the infection and thereby mortality rate. The safety of our community depends on staying in distance learning. I have been following the governor's order since March. I have not visited friends or family indoors since that time. I did not visit family over Thanksgiving, Christmas, or the New Year. I have been doing my part to keep our community safe. Now I am going to be asked to spend time in a classroom with people outside of my immediate family unit. People I don't know well and have no way to know who they've been exposed to for hours at a time, day after day, without proper ventilation, without proper protection. As a board who meets remotely, I ask, are you willing to be in these classrooms? Will you be meeting in person when you are asking us to meet in person? Are you willing to accept the death of a teacher or a student from COVID as a necessity to be back in school? The only safe way to open schools is to wait for vaccinations to be administered. Our focus should not be on opening quickly. Our focus should be on opening safely. Please continue to keep us safe and healthy in distance learning. Respectfully, Kelly Welker. Dear Canby School Board, I want to go back to school. I want to make more memories with the people I care about. I want to be able to learn more about science and technology, not through a screen. I want to learn better and have a better understanding of the stuff teachers are talking about. My brother, for instance, has nobody his age to play and interact with. People are super stressed about trying to figure out how to work something on an iPad or even a laptop. I have lacked sometimes understanding what the teacher is saying. I miss my friends and my teachers. I might not get a chance to even be in middle school if you don't open up the schools. I want to learn more than what I'm learning right now. I miss my friends and the teachers. Please open back up schools. I am desperate to see more people than I do now. Kinsley, age 12, 7th grade. So now, Marjorie, I'm going to see if I can find you and allow you to talk. Hi, Marjorie.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can. Please proceed.
Thank you. Members of the board, thank you for listening tonight. My name is Marjorie DeLetera. I teach children in 2nd grade at Knight Elementary School. Individual districts now have the choice of reopening schools, and with that choice comes great responsibility. As an educator, I greatly miss my students, and I want to be in the classroom with them. But I know I speak for others when I say we cannot take this choice lightly and just give in to COVID fatigue and inconveniences. We must instead rely on common sense, safety, and science to make responsible decisions. With this in mind, I have some concerns about reopening schools at this time. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. Things are as bad or worse as they have ever been. Clackamas and Marion counties are still deep in the red and not even close to meeting the original reopening metrics. If in-person learning begins with grades K through 3, it seems as though primary staff and students are going to be the guinea pigs in this process. What if we contribute to the spread? While there has clearly been interest in the community to find a way to return to some form of in-person learning, and I want to be with my students as well, I fear the district may be being pressured into reopening before it is truly safe to do so. Again, just because we can doesn't mean we should. We need to learn from other countries' circumstances. The United States has always followed the unfortunate suit of Europe. The UK is in its third lockdown. What does this tell us about our future? Like Portland Public Community, we need to remember those nearly 500 educators or children who have died from the coronavirus nationwide. Do we want to take the risk of adding to that number? We all want to get back to class with our students, but it won't cost. Thank you.
Thanks, Marjorie.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is from Megan Terry, and then Michelle Walker and Morgan Westenfeld. You're going to be up after this. It looks like you want to read your comments, so you'll be up shortly. Sorry, just a minute. I have to find my place. Hi, Kamala. I have a comment for the school board meeting tomorrow. I would like my comment to be read as I'll probably not be able to attend the meeting. I think it would be wise to wait until teachers and other school personnel have received the vaccine before opening our schools again. Thank you, Megan Terry, first grade teacher at Trost. Okay, so Michelle Walker, I am going to turn on your microphone just a second. Hi, Michelle.
Angie, I'm not sure if Michelle wanted to read hers or if that was one that we were to read.
Kamala, I understood.
Send me a note that she wants to, if she can get on.
Well, she's on. I think, Michelle, if you can unmute. I don't know if I can unmute you. Are you there, Michelle? All right, I will, I'll disable talking for now, and then I will circle back to see, Michelle, if you are able to read your comment in a few, and then if not, we can read it. We can read it for you.
And Angie, Tom Scott is over on the attendee side as well.
Okay. The air traffic control tower is busy tonight. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Hi, Tom. Okay, so I'm in Morgan Westenfeld is who I'm going to allowed to talk now. Hi, Morgan, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
We can. Please go ahead.
Dear Canby board, staff, community, and parents, I appreciate all of your hard work the past 9 months as we have transitioned from in-person learning to at-home learning through paper packets in the spring to comprehensive distance learning in COLA this fall. I know the decisions that have had to be made were not easy, and a lot of prep work and consideration was needed to get to where we are today. A huge shout out to our administrators for thinking of the needs of the teachers, staff, students, and families. With a survey for learning models being sent out to families, I think it is important to clarify what the hybrid model will look like. We as teachers and school staff want students back in the building. We miss our kids. However, we need to consider the safety of our staff. With a vaccine being offered to our healthcare workers, firefighters, and police officers, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I want to ensure that parents and community members understand that this hybrid model will be nothing like school in any other year. There are currently 13 desks in my classroom. Students are expected to stay at their desks for the entire 2.5 hours they are in school. Masks must remain on, and students cannot work in partners or groups. We can't have shared materials. Students must remain facing forward. If we are to leave the classroom for something, students must stand on one of the 13 numbered spots around my classroom and remain those 6 feet apart as we walk in line through the building. Parents and guardians will not be allowed into the building for any reason. You can't walk your child to class. You can't volunteer in their room. You must remain outside the building at all times. This is to keep everyone safe. In addition, there have been 0 final decisions made on substitutes for teachers and staff. If a teacher is sick, needs a personal day, or heaven forbid, has to quarantine for 2 weeks, we don't know who will be teaching their students. Parents need to be prepared that they could get a notice in the morning that their child cannot attend school that day because there's not a teacher available to be in their classroom. Or 0 learning is able to take place because there is a specialist teacher, such as music, PE, etc., thrown into a classroom at the last possible minute and has had no time to prepare. We could also have a repeat of this spring. We were forced to close with no notice and families are screaming. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Great. I'm going to read. Our kids are struggling with distance learning in so many ways. I have 3 in an elementary school, and I have seen regression in many different areas. Other states are all back in school and making it work fine and taking proper precautions. Please send our kids back. If someone is uncomfortable with it, then have distance learning still an option for those who are not comfortable. This is affecting everyone's mental health. And that's from Sarah Chapin. Sherry, I'm probably butchering all these names. I have 5 kids in the Canby School District. My youngest would have been a kindergartner and my oldest is a senior. My heart has broken over and over this school year, watching my children struggle in so many different ways. Here are some words that come to mind when I think of this quote unquote school year. Sadness, depression, frustration, loneliness, and anxiety. To think of the missed learning opportunities is too much to take in. The missed relationships with friends and teachers, the opportunity for my 5-year-old to learn to be social, independent, and learn so much. My senior who will never get a senior year, something she has worked so hard for, and the countless things my other 3 have had to miss out on. I am begging for the sake of my children and all the children in our district, please let our kids go back to school before it's all gone and over with. Thank you very much, Sherry Leader. So I'm going to read Spencer Goodfellows and then Steph Agar and Tamara Quant. You will be up after that, just so you have, you know what's coming. Members of the board, I would like to make a statement in support of opening in-person learning. I believe that as a teacher in our district and a parent of CARE students, I have a unique perspective. I am witness to the impact of the events of this last year from both a personal and professional perspective. I currently teach special education students through Zoom, while helping my own children make sense of their schoolwork. Both my students and the children struggle, but are doing their best. If I can return to the classroom and send my children back to their classrooms, we can reduce their struggles. As a veteran, I understand personal sacrifice, and I welcome a chance to serve my community again during Esther times. My eyes are crossing. I ask that we reopen our schools safely and soon. Best regards, Spencer Goodfellow. Okay, Steph Agar, I'm going to unmute your mic. Hi, Steph.
Hey,
Yep.
I actually think this is Tamara's comment, and I think she just CC'd me on her email just to keep me in the loop.
Oh, okay. I will then unmute you, and we'll talk to you in a little bit. So, Tamara, I'm going to unmute your microphone. Hi, Tamara. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Go ahead.
Dear Canby School Board, although I am also an elementary specialist in the district, I am addressing you today as a district parent. I am highly concerned with what I view as rushed and scientifically misguided school reopening decisions being made by the state and unfortunately also being pushed by some of our education leaders and parent groups here in Canby. I worry that the loudest voices in the room will drown out the most vulnerable populations, even if what they have to say has no validity, scientific basis, or concern for their fellow humans. And in terms of school reopening, this is certainly what appears to be happening across our state and county. While I am well aware, both personally and professionally, that distance learning is not necessarily the most effective method of education for the majority of our students, I also know that teachers are working harder than they ever have and are doing their best every day to ensure that they meet the needs of each and every student they work with. They deserve nothing but admiration, kindness, and respect from their administrators, parents, and the community at large. As the parent of a bilingual attention deficit third grader, I know firsthand how difficult homeschooling is, and I empathize greatly with the valid concerns of parents at the start of the school year. But as I have watched the distance learning model unfold this year, I have also seen my son thrive and enjoy school in a way that he never has before. His teachers go above and beyond each day to prepare engaging lessons, ensure learning is happening, and implement necessary social emotional supports to aid students through this difficult time. Thanks to his unyielding teachers, my son is so much happier in this distance learning model because he has the necessary breaks needed to refocus his brain, explore independent interests, increase creativity, build independence, and grow his level of personal responsibility. He has also developed a much deeper sense of empathy, caring, and kindness towards others. I have been amazed and emotionally overwhelmed by the positive growth and change I have seen in my child over the past 4 months. I cannot thank his teachers enough for the work they are doing and support they provide to all of the students in their class. If Canby makes the unfortunate decision to reopen quickly, thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and read the next one. I write this letter as a request for our Canby schools to take action with reopening. I come before you as a parent with 2 high schoolers and an elementary student. With the opportunity put before us to open, I urge the school board to hear our voices, to hear our students' voices, however muted they may seem to be at this time. Our Canby students need this hope far beyond what any of you may know. There's another pandemic happening, and it's titled Anxiety and Depression. Our students are the ones dying from that. Please hear our stories, hear our requests, and open our schools. Thank you, Tricia Moon.
And then, Sarah, it sounds like Michelle Walker's mic isn't working, so she would like us to go ahead and read it. Do you mind doing that one?
Yep. Oh, let me go back and find that one.
And then after that, we'll have Troy Souls and Veronica Stewart. And then I have a couple of messages that were received that aren't on the list that we have board members. So we have a few more to go.
Okay. All right, here's Michelle's. My name is Michelle, and my daughter has been attending Knight Elementary since 2017 when she started kindergarten. I've been the PTA treasurer for 2 years, have volunteered whenever possible, and contributed to class snacks and supplies, and have taught my daughter by example to show and tell teachers how much we appreciate them because they are very special. I support teachers and school personnel to the utmost degree possible and have held them in the highest regard. After all, they are a big part of shaping the future and the future of our children. That has been true my entire life until this year. I can't speak to Canby teachers specifically as they've all avoided or evaded questions regarding the closures. Whether too afraid to speak out or forbidden to do so is lost on me. I've witnessed teachers struggling with getting their children settled at home while also trying to maintain the classroom. I've seen their facial reactions when students are not paying attention or aren't engaged. Have worked with them on mutual technology issues. I know that they're working hard and doing the best they can with the situation as it is. I've also witnessed teachers spewing venom all over the internet. I've watched as a teacher verbally attacked a student for a Zoom background that said, "I am essential. Zoom is not school." Additionally, I've seen what the closures are doing to the kids all over, and also to my own daughter. Mackenzie has always been a spitfire, challenging and persistent in the best and most frustrating ways. She's very headstrong and smart and amazing. She has loved her friends and teachers wholeheartedly and has had it all ripped away. Last year's joke of virtual learning threw her into a depression. She hated life, she hated me, she hated the school, and she hated herself. This year, that depression has turned into apathy. She no longer cares. I'm not sure which is worse. She's lost her spark, that fire that has made her who she is. She no longer feels passionately about anything. She's losing herself. She also lost all the work she put in to be an advanced reader, advanced math, and overall an advanced student. Thanks, Kamala.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm going to welcome Troy. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Let's see. Considering the reopening of schools and encouraging schools to be back to in-person classes, at least at the K-3 level, I find myself conflicted as a long-term teacher, coach, parent, and member of this community. On one hand, I'm sensitive to the need for students to be back to school. I see how this is difficult for students' mental health, how students are being hindered in their educational experience opportunities, and how families are challenged and stressed with trying to manage distance learning. Despite my best efforts to the contrary and those of my colleagues, I see the diminished scaffolding and learning environment for students in a digital world. As an assistant coach in football and track, I've worked to try and mitigate some of that and to provide opportunities for students to engage in team building activities and to interact positively yet safely with their peers. However, I should note that's outside wearing masks and maintaining social distancing. Nevertheless, I cannot deny that we are facing a serious existential threat with this pandemic, and that we need to be mindful and thoughtful in the ways that we move to get students back to school, lest we recklessly endanger the lives of students, staff members, and members of this community. We'll get one shot at this. If we screw it up, we could see ourselves closing with dire consequences as fast as we open. Now, I've experienced this on a personal level. I've got a cousin 2 years older than me, and the closest thing I've ever had to a sister who worked as an instructional assistant for at-risk youth at a school district in Idaho. You know, Idaho, the state where they didn't wear masks and often ignored social distancing rules because apparently the COVID didn't exist there. She contracted the virus through her work and ended up in the ICU of a hospital on a ventilator. Fortunately, she made it out of the ICU, but she's now a long hauler on portable oxygen. And that's her reward for her dedication to students and her slightly better than minimum wage hourly rate, working in a state that isn't mindful about that. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Troy. Veronica Stewart is next. Welcome, Veronica.
Hi, thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to say that all of the statements in my letter that I wrote are backed up with cited articles that were sent along with my comments to Ms. Davis. So basically, I don't think it is safe for students or employees to go back in person. Many years ago, when I took my educational law class, I was taught that the only right that students have if they're general ed students is to be safe. That as a school district, we cannot be sued for a kid not learning. Obviously, that's not what we aim for, but we can be sued if children are not safe. And I don't believe that we can keep our children safe. 30% of your students and their families are Hispanic or Latino. That is a group who is particularly hard hit by this disease. Back in April, when everything was closed down, children only accounted for 2% of the COVID cases. They now account for 11% of the cases. They have had heart failure. They've had strokes, the MIS-C condition, and death. Children have died from this. Opening schools is going to increase our community spread, and it's going to increase the spread in the building. When I looked at the reentry plan that was put out in August, I actually laughed out loud. It stated that the STA bus drivers would be cleaning the buses and visually inspecting children. This is the same company that called me back when my 10-year-old was a kindergartner to say, I guess you probably noticed your kid didn't get picked up for school today. He was in morning kindergarten. They called me at 2:00. He wasn't even supposed to get picked up from our home. They also consistently took my older son late to middle school to the extent that I was getting phone calls because he was marked absent.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. Okay, I have 3 comments. That I'm going to read now. Good afternoon to whom this may concern. As a mother of 3 in the Canby School District, ages 8, 6, and 5, my kids have been greatly affected with the school shutdown last spring. My kindergartner, now first grader, missed out on the basic fundamentals he needed to start first grade off strongly, with packets that were not at his level, nor were they tailored to his specific skill level. This has made starting his first grade year extremely difficult, with most days starting or ending with tears and frustration. At this age, there are too many distractions and not enough independent time with his teacher he would typically get while in person. It is too long of days to keep them focused when they should be hands-on and burning off energy. Instead, they are shoved in front of an iPad for hours a day, expected to participate. My 6-year-old is far behind in reading. He has had a hard enough time recognizing letters and numbers from missing the end of his kinder year, and that has now carried over to reading, spelling, and more. He needs to be in school. He needs the appropriate person helping him and now needs extra support, and we are looking into a tutor because of it. The shutdown has made him so self-conscious when he sees other students reading and he cannot sound out a small 4-letter word. This is not what school is about. He is embarrassed and has shut down, and for that, makes me extremely upset for him. This is not school. This is not what he should be feeling. Once thriving social butterfly, my once thriving social butterfly is now a child who has outbursts of anger, signs of depression, and is occasionally showing signs of distress when he is not able to get the support he needs through virtual learning. He is a very smart, advanced student who's struggling with the long-term effects of distance learning. Not only do the effects of being isolated at home all day long, trying to work around his younger brother and sister, but also not receiving the proper tools and guidance he would normally get in the classroom. He does not receive any one-on-one help, which results in frustration, arguments, and sometimes needing to take a day off from school. He never had these issues prior, and he's always been respectful and loved school. School is not the same. He no longer enjoys it. It is a chore.
Time.
Okay, thank you. Dear school board, superintendent, and supportive staff, this has been a trying year for most. I haven't written much in the past because my family's needs are not as great as many. I refuse to keep silent any longer when it comes to our children's needs. We have seen much loss in the way of employment, illness, and devastation with wildfires in this state. I have sympathy for those that have had many losses. What my family has been affected by is the lack of direct learning from in-person school and the much needed socialization and direct instruction that our children crave and deserve. We personally have a very strong family unit, foods, financial stability, and health. For this, I am very thankful and grateful. We have all the technology needed to complete the asked of education that is being provided at this time, but it is still unsatisfactory. Not everyone has this. Despite everything, we too are hurting mentally. Learning from home, one cannot fully experience what in-person learning provides. We've also seen an increase in weight in our children and lack of motivation. Abuse and neglect is happening silently. This cannot and should not be denied. These kids do not have the support they need at home to advance. In-person learning needs to return now. I want to see schools bring back sports and extracurriculars such as choir and band. Children are not super spreaders as reported by many physicians and pediatricians across the country. We can control the spread of COVID with screening, health hygiene, and with the many therapeutics we have developed. This is science. We need to now push to return to school. Okay. And that is from Jenny Mills, mother to children in Canby School District. And I think I forgot to read the person's name of the last comment before this, so I'll just do that now. It was Ashley Fryman. That was the one directly before Jenny. And then we received some signatures on a petition. Melissa Bussey submitted 5 names. She says, we are very concerned about the continued delays to reopen our schools K-12. Please consider this request and the attached petition in your discussions at the meeting tonight. And the petition is titled Petition to Open Canby Schools Now. So we received 5 signatures on that. And then Kamala received by fax 6 names, 7, 8, 9 names in addition to the 5 from Ms. Bussey. So I just wanted to acknowledge that we did receive those. And I'll just say again, as I said in the beginning, even though that we weren't able to read the entirety of all of the comments, the board does receive all of the text and we read them and take the comments into consideration. Thank you all for, I always like to say, participating in democracy, because I think it matters for people to speak up when they have concerns about something. Okay, we will move on to item 4.0, consent agenda, 4.1, minutes from December 17th, and 4.2, personnel changes. Are there any questions or corrections? If not, would someone like to make a motion, please?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
It is moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Pamela, will you please call the roll?
Stephanie? Aye. Dawn?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Angie?
Aye. Motion carries. We'll move on to item 5.1, Clackamas ESD Local Service Plan Presentation and Approval. And we have some guests with us tonight, as you see here, and I will turn it over. Trip, are you gonna introduce the team?
Sure, I'll introduce Superintendent Jada Rupley first, and then Jada, I know you always enjoy introducing your team, and so I'll let you do that. But I'll just preface your remarks, Jada, by saying how much we appreciate working with the ESD and the support that we get. And you know, I know it's been a difficult year for you as well as all of our school districts, but we really do appreciate the continued support. So thank you.
Good evening, Chair Dilks and board members. Thank you very much for having us this evening. With me, I have our chair, John Iman, and board member Greg McKenzie, as well as Shirley Skidmore, our communication director. This is our annual meeting that we join you with our local service plan. And what we will look at is for the coming year to serve all 10 districts in our region. We've also provided you with an annual report and first time ever, some individual district report that I'll talk about in a minute. So you can see some examples of our work together in the region. But before I do that, what I would like to really do is a couple sincere thank yous. First of all, I'd like to start with Mike Zagava. Last year, he joined the ESD board and our budget in May to approve. And Mike, we hope you join us again this year as we look at that approval. We invite members from the boards from all of our 10 districts to be able to join the ESD board as they approve that budget. I'd like to also offer a thank you and gratitude to Trip Goodall. Trip he's a valued member of our regional superintendents group, and they together have been called on unprecedented challenges this year, and they're not over. As you well know, we will continue with many of those challenges that we face. And then I'd like to also mention several of your staff on page 10 in our local survey, the region. And finally, I'd just like to say this is January and it's School Board Appreciation Month. Never before have we needed your leadership and commitment. So thank you to each of you for the work that you're doing in Canby. So I'm going to present 3 documents tonight, and I will do this as quickly as I can. Our plan is an annual plan that's required by the state to be able to do this. It covers all the services that the ESD will provide to our local districts in the coming year. All fall, as you remember hearing from me before, the district advisories work together to decide what their priorities are. The plan was approved by the regional superintendents in our December chief administrators meeting, and the ESD approved it, and they send it forward for you. The final piece of this process in this year-long process will be, as I talked about, the budget meeting that's on May 26th. Then we do the final work. So I'm going to present 3 documents. One is for review and approval by you, and the other 2 are for your background information. For your approval and review will be this document that we'll talk about a little bit in detail. It reflects the partnership and the comprehensive review of all this Clackamas ESD services in special education, technology, teaching and learning, as well as all the direct revenue that applies to the services for you. We also have contracts and grant services that cover many of those, and I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the Canby specific of what that comes back to your district from. New this year, we have added services which we think are incredibly important, and those are the distance learning. We've worked with teachers in professional learning to look at Google Classroom, how to do work remotely that they probably have never had to do before. For your information, the Canby School District has a detailed report, which we'll talk a little bit about, and that will be this one. And then finally, your print packet includes all the information of our annual report of what we did together last year. And I hope when you have some time, you look at this. It's an amazing story to tell about all the work that has happened, not only in Canby, but all of your surrounding districts to do. So for the information, Shirley, do you want to go ahead and put up the Canby spot? Like I said, new this year, we've looked at some of the work in Canby. As you can see on the front, $5 million is the value that we put to the services that have been delivered to Canby. If you look specifically, and let's go ahead and move quickly, Shirley, to the next page in terms of these are the key services that come to you in Canby. We have early learning, teaching and learning. Also, as you can see in your core services, you have $1.6 million that you are receiving in special education, your LEAP programs, technology, and also the teaching and learning, as well as substitute teacher registration and career services. You specifically have done work with us in contracted services, and those are we do the work with your early learning evaluations for those children that are 0 to 5. Heron Creek, we also work together in a partnership with Parrot Creek, and several different technology programs that we do. And in fact, part of the funding that is in here was originally when we shared Brett Adkins, and then you took them all. So, and then the second piece is that you had, we assisted with sunsetting your FileMaker server system to be able to put that in place. And then finally, over on the additional services, on behalf of our districts, we are competitively writing for grants and services that we can offer to all the students and families in our region. Early learning and early intervention is one of those. Head Start to Success, serving those families in poverty. And childcare resource and referral, which has become a very, very important program because it also identifies and provides professional learning to all of our licensed childcare providers. So as you see, those are the things that we clearly do with Canby in mind, as well as our region. So I am open for any questions that you might have for this evening. As you look through, you can certainly send us a message as well.
Thank you. And by the way, not sorry about Brett. Just not sorry.
Well, I am.
I started to say I should say sorry, and I was like, but I'm not. I'm really
not sorry. Yeah, sorry, not sorry. We got that. We got that.
Yeah. Looks like Rob has a question.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for being here tonight, Jada, and all of your team. I'm always impressed by the amount of collaboration and support between the ESD and our school district.
Thank you very much, Rob. I would like to, you did hit the target in terms of on page 16. New this year for us is the student success funding that happened through the legislature and through the CAT tax. We have just begun to be able to do that. You will see that our mental health services are working with all the school counselors to be able to do that. There are some programs that are available, and you will soon see some more that will come. We don't do direct services with your families, but what we do is we work with through counselors as well as some other ways to provide programs to the region. I think the same thing is with some health. I suspect that you will see some work that we will do as some of the federal dollars come our way to be able to provide more services, including what we call Everyday Matters, where we're able to help with school teams to be able to bring kids back to school. The other piece of that tied in with that is technology, is that we have been involved with technology in terms of some of the work for reprogramming, because we have more parents and families using systems than we have ever had before.
Thanks, Angie. I wanted to say how much I appreciate the detailed list of services that I think this is new this year. I think you said that this is new to see this list. It's great for us as a board to see this. I've never seen this, so this is great. It's obviously a great partnership for us. My question is we're going to be talking here shortly about return to school, in-person learning. And so could you touch on kind of the ESD's role with helping districts, specifically Canby, in that transition?
So Tom, first of all, on this call with me is Shirley Skidmore, who actually put together in her first year on the job is the work on the specifics for your district. So you do know what the services are that come. I will say this, the advisories have met some weekly, some more often. The superintendents, we meet weekly to be able to bring, whether it's the Department of Education or whether we have meetings this week. We also met with our local public health, trying to determine where they are sitting in terms of what the metrics would look like in our region. So what we are doing is bringing all the resources we can to school districts, allowing for that space for conversation to really try to figure out what the science means and how best to bring kids back to school, because I believe that's at the top of mind for everyone. We know that professional eyes for our kids is very, very important, but we also know that we have to be safe in how we do that.
Thank you for that. Is the ESD playing a role in kind of I guess a regional approach with neighboring school districts having the same type of approach going back to school?
Actually, even just as soon as this afternoon, people collaborated on some messages to be able to deliver to each of the communities. I think it's important. Families across our region are looking to see what each of you as a district does. And I think it's important that our superintendents, our communication, all of us are looking together as what's the best way to be able to serve this regionally. Am I giving advice? No, Tom. I don't know that I could, I don't see myself as doing that or the ESD, but what we want to do is provide that space and platform for them to have whatever they need to make the decisions that fit for your community.
Great, thank you.
Uh-huh.
So can I just jump in there really quick, Jada?
You bet.
So just to that point, when Jada's talking about some communication, so a number of communications coordinators were convened to be able to put together a common communication with regards to how districts could approach reopening our schools here shortly in the near future. And so convening that group really went through the ESD. And to your point, Tom, about a regional approach, I do think we continue to have that discussion around the importance of sharing ideas, making sure that we understand each other's plans, how to share resources, those kinds of things. And I think you're absolutely right. I think that is the direction that we should take and will continue to take. So.
Are there other questions from the board? Comments? Yeah, I was oddly excited to get the packet in the mail because it felt sort of like we were in a real board meeting. So thank you for sending the information to us. And as Tom said, we appreciate the evolving level of detail that is it's very useful. So board, we need to vote to approve. I wrote it down on a different piece of paper. The local service plan. So would someone like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the 2021-22 Clackamas ESD local service plan as presented.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the Clackamas ESD local service plan as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Kamala, will you please call a roll?
Stephanie?
Aye.
Dawn?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And Angie?
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you very much to all of you. And I would also like to offer if board members, Greg McKenzie or John Iman, would like to address your board.
I don't see any microphones being unmuted, so I'm going to give you another second in case you want to pipe in. I've learned to do a little bit of pausing as I'm running these things.
I'm kind of thinking I'd love to have you come with us. You're doing a pretty good job.
Thanks. Trial by fire. I tried to tell Brett that I should be on I'm clearly now should be on the team for IT, but I don't think I actually apply. Thank you all for being here very much. We appreciate your annual visit.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks. Okay, item 5.2, return to school and planning update. I wanted, before I turn it over, I wanted to just give you all an update. I think I reported last, who knows, at a meeting during the school year at some point in time. Time is such a strange thing right now. That Brett and his team did some research to figure out what it would take for us to be able to do an in-person board meeting and still also continue to host meetings as we do now on Zoom so that members of the community are able to listen if they would like. They did the research, they have a list of equipment that they'll need, they have a plan in place. So today we talked a little bit about moving on that. We're still trying to figure out the best space, but we have a couple of options, and my goal, which it may be a little bit ambitious, but it's to have an in-person meeting starting the first meeting in February. As we've said all along, if we're asking students and teachers and staff to return to buildings, then we certainly will do the same. So just wanted to give you all that update. And now I will turn it over to Trip. And I wanted to let everyone know that we also, we've heard a lot of questions about how teachers are sort of feeling about all of this and their perspective. And so Steph Agar is actually going to give us a little bit of an update there as well once Trip is done. Trip.
Thanks, Angie. So tonight we're going to talk about where we are with returning to in-person learning. There's a lot to digest. Obviously, we have been at this now for this COVID pandemic now going on 9 months. And I can assure you all of us do want our children and our staff members back into schools and safely and responsibly as we can. And so this is really the first opportunity for us to have a presentation like this tonight as a result of the governor's announcement on December 23rd. And I have Autumn Foster here tonight with me. She's our project manager, communications coordinator, and Autumn has been really monitoring the metrics and has been a part of informing the board weekly on where we are. And so I've asked her to kind of walk us through kind of where we are with regards to the governor's announcement. And then she'll pass it on to me and I'll talk about where we are as a district with regards to a returning to in-person learning. So I'll switch it over to Autumn to start.
Hi, everybody. I shared my screen early this time, so we didn't have any technical problems. So I'm just going to start. We're going to do a quick review of the metrics, the current metrics, and then I want to go over kind of what's changed since the governor made her announcement on December 23rd. And then I'm also going to do a quick review of our operational blueprints for reentry, because that is kind of the first step that we had to go through in order to prepare for any sort of in-person learning. So just real quickly, here is where we're at with the metrics. The current thresholds are still in place. And so I decided to graph it this way so you could kind of see it looks really good, right? Like we're clearly, kind of coming down here. On Monday's report, we were at 317.2 cases in the county per 100,000 people. So we're still definitely above that threshold that would keep us in distance learning in that red extreme risk area. I do want to just caution, though, there has been some warning from health authorities that we may have seen a few weeks of underreporting due to the holidays, due to people maybe not getting tested, and kind of a data lag. So we're hoping we don't see a big spike, but they did warn that could happen. But they said that after Thanksgiving too, we did see a bump and then we came back down. So, and then I just did the same thing here for test positivity rate. So you can see we're at 6.2% for this past week. So that's good. So I just want to go through. The governor, made that announcement December 23rd. I know you have all read it. I just want to highlight the 4 main points that she made in her directive to the Oregon Department of Education and the Oregon Health Authority. And so first here is highlighted, she wants more Oregon schools, starting with elementary schools, to transition to in-person instruction by February 15th. And so I do want to just point out a couple things that unfortunately doesn't mean we can just open the doors for all students. We still have to follow the guidance, the health protocols, the safety protocols within the documents. She also clarified, K through 3 is where we need to begin. And I understand why that is, because according to many studies, and this was also echoed by Clackamas County Public Health in that regional meeting that we were talking about earlier with the ESD, there are studies, and our health department has reviewed them, that if you're following all of the right steps and taking all the proper health protocols in elementary schools, K3 students, K6 students do not necessarily contribute to additional transmission. And again, the public health made that really clear, that it's as long as you're following all of the correct protocols. The second point was basically she wants the health authority to partner with us to provide on-site rapid testing. And so we know this is going to be run through Oregon Health Authority, and there's going to have to be some sort of training, obviously, for our staff, for our health staff, on what this is going to look like. And we are expecting to learn more about this in the coming weeks. So I'll get into the dates around this in just a few minutes. I do want to let you know that just within the last 2 hours, we've learned that the governor is holding a news conference tomorrow at 11 in coordination with Oregon Health Authority and Oregon Department of Education. And so, I don't know if they're going to specifically address the rapid testing, or if they're going to have a discussion around vaccines. Of course, we'll learn all of this tomorrow. And so then third, this is the big one. I think that had everybody talking. And she ordered that the health metrics for returning to in-person instruction will become advisory rather than mandatory. And then finally, so this is where we're kind of getting to the date part of all of this. She ordered ODE and OHA to update the health metrics. So this again kind of reinforces that while the metrics have moved from mandatory to advisory, they're not going away, and there will be an update to them. And maybe that's part of the news conference tomorrow as well. We don't know. And so she also ordered these 2 agencies to work together to update the Ready Schools Safe Learners guidance. And all of that has to be completed by January 19th. So you're looking at changes to all of the guidance that we've already built blueprints based on old guidance. So that might change. And then working to push to have elementary kids in school by February 15th. So once again, as we've just have, we're ready, we're set, and then the goal post moves. So we're hoping that it's not anything too drastic, and whatever it is, I know that we can all work together to meet the goal. So I did just mention operational blueprints. So I just wanted to remind you of kind of the process for this. So they were last updated on October 2nd, and that was to incorporate our feedback from Clackamas County Public Health. And we have posted them on our website. You have reviewed them. And so at the end of the day, our facilities are ready to go. And so these are just a couple of images from inside some of our schools showing, hey, we built these blueprints, and then this is what it looks like within our buildings. In terms of the blueprints, we have our classrooms set up for social distancing. We have directional signage posted. We have new HVAC and able to review at any time on our website. And in there is our comprehensive plans for responding to COVID in terms of screening and isolation. It includes transportation protocols, and we have all of STA's information on their disinfecting and social distancing. And then we have also hired health assistants to help support the school nursing team. And so we do know, this is something we do know, that this guidance is going to change on January 19th. We are going to have to update these blueprints. And here's just a quick look at what we understand to be the anticipated change requirements for site-based rapid testing, what that's going to look like. And then we're hoping to learn more about where educators and school staff will fall in the vaccine schedule in the coming weeks, hopefully. So now I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Goodall, and then we both are able to answer any questions that you have at the end.
Okay, so if you can go to the in-person learning slide. I really want to start by saying it's, again, my responsibility to provide a safe and secure environment for both our students and staff. We recognize that during a global pandemic, we're unable to fully meet the needs of all of our families and students. And so it really comes down to our purpose really is about creating a learning schedule that maximizes safety for our students and staff and maximizes student learning. It has the capacity of expanding to more grade levels and longer student days, viable option for all Canby families wishing to participate in it. You can see, I put on this slide, it's a goal. Our goal is the week of February 8th to begin to transition students back in K3 if the family wishes them. We've been planning for a return to in-person learning since summer. We've had to make adjustments throughout the school year as guidance has changed. And the difficulty again for us, as Autumn mentioned, is the guidance continues to change. We will see new guidance on January 19th, and again, we don't have an idea yet what that would look like, but we anticipate that there probably will be some changes in our planning. Throughout this past week, I've consulted with ODE, Public Health, our ESD, regional superintendents, our Association of Superintendents, our own leadership team, our principals, our directors have been working hours and hours and hours on trying to put together what will be hopefully the very best model that we can put in front of our students and staff. We sent out this past week, as many of you know, and in a survey rather to our K-6 parents, trying to determine what they're interested in with regards to services for their children or their child. And so we are taking a look at that so we can determine what kinds of programs could we put in place and how we would be able to staff it. So again, some of the things we have to consider throughout this process include, again, the guidance on January 19th. I know that I had a meeting this morning with Colt Gill and a small group of superintendents, and it's very clear that You know, he's telling us to be a little bit cautious about how you plan because things could change on the 19th. The results of the parent survey is really critical, again, in terms of informing us about our staffing, what our cohort sizes would be in each building, and it's really going to help determine the schedule for our in-person learning models. We need to review and renegotiate working conditions with our association. And I'll say right now, and I know Steph is here tonight to give her perspective as CEA president, but I feel strongly that we have had a very good, solid relationship throughout the year, throughout the last 9 months with regards to how we can approach a real crisis, and not only a societal crisis, but certainly a crisis in education. Logistics around technology, you know, there's the possibility of, again, the challenges of moving students from different teachers into different programs, because again, not all families will elect to necessarily come back to in-person learning. We will obviously be looking at the number of students that'll be requiring transportation. And so part of that also has ramifications with cohorting. There's also the possibility of school staff, as Autumn briefly mentioned at the end of her presentation there, potentially being moved up on the priority list for vaccinations. And if that's the case, we really need a better understanding of the timing on that so that we can make wise decisions. We need to take into account some of the information we've learned from public health authorities. And then I'll speak to this in a little bit, but we've recently learned that there is some concerns regarding limited liability insurance for school districts like ours, for example, that are in a county that is in the red zone, right? The most at-risk zone. There are some concerns about that I'll speak to here later. I think the next slide. Is there more to that one, Autumn?
Nope, you're good.
Okay, can you go to the next one?
Oh, this is the next one. We're on the next one now. This is the public health one.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you give me a number on that? Is it 14? Oh, here we go. When I met with Clackamas County Public Health last week, they really helped clarify a few things around the metric changes. You know, the first thing they told us, and again, Autumn and a number of communication coordinators were in the meeting, as well as all the superintendents in our region. And this was with the Clackamas County Health Authority. So there was Dr. Present and a number of other staff members. But first, they told us that even though the metrics are advisory, we should still be following them. Again, acknowledging that there is always going to be risk in opening up into in-person learning while in that red or extreme risk category, which we are at this moment. So that indicates clearly that, you know, that we are not where we want to be with regard to community spread. But that said, she also indicated that, again, based on science, she believes it's relatively safe to prioritize bringing back our youngest students into our buildings. Again, we press them on what their role is, and, you know, they clarified that the local health authority does not see themselves as an entity that grants approval for reopening plans, but they made it very clear that they will provide us with their thinking and their thoughts around it. But again, there's no zero risk, and that we would expect that there could be COVID cases. There will be COVID cases in schools, likely because of what could come from outside into the schools. But again, they emphasize that as long as all health protocols are followed, it's really important to try to get our youngest students into school. They went on to say that they're really at capacity right now. And so they're having a difficult time with contact tracing, and they're looking at increasing the number of staff that they have right now so they can support our local school districts in the Clackamas County region. Make sure I'm on the right one here. So here's where we are right now. Am I on the right one there, Autumn? We're kind of playing. We're playing back and forth with both of our computers here.
You're in the right spot.
We're required to continue offering connected at-home learning for those families who do not want to send their students to school. And so we are, as a district, going to run 3 models. So we will have a hybrid in-person model that we will continue to refine and work on here in the next couple of weeks. We have a connected at-home learning model, which is what all of our students have been involved with for the most part. And then we also have our COLA program, where students are really on a self-paced program. And I'll say here, I am a strong believer in parent choice. And our job is to present appropriate options and the right information to allow parents to determine the best way to have their child educated during this pandemic. And so I know people talk about it's all about reopening schools. I'm looking at this as it's about offering parents options so they can make an informed decision around what's best for their family and their child. As I said earlier, I also have a responsibility to make sure that I'm providing our staff with as much information as they need to make informed decisions as well. So we presented a hybrid model, back at the start of the year, and that was submitted to ODE and our local health authority over the last grade 6. And at that point, we can begin to look at secondary school hybrid, because we can hopefully demonstrate that COVID transmission can be limited through an elementary school hybrid model. We do have, I want to make sure people understand that we do have the ability to offer what they call limited in-person at all grade levels right now. And we are, again, looking to determine how we can make that our next priority after we open up our elementary hybrid. I've asked our secondary administrators who have been working on this for quite some time to begin exploring what those small group opportunities could look like. Limited in person, defined by the Oregon Department of Education, has been really defined as providing a small group of students. They actually give you a number. They can't be there for more than 2 hours at a time, but it's really about supplemental learning and not about what we'll call direct instruction. So it's where a student could come in and we would assist them getting on their computer so they can have better access to our comprehensive distance learning model. And I spoke with Superintendent Gill, Assistant Superintendent Gill, today about if the Oregon Department of Education could expand the definition of limited in person so that we can begin to bring in more of our 7-12 students so they can get the kind of assistance and support that they need, because we all know how important it will be to get those students back into our schools. So our secondary administrators, again, are beginning to explore small group opportunities. We know we're going to have to provide staff some additional training on site in their buildings around, for example, arrival and dismissal procedures, potentially around what rapid testing looks like in our buildings. And we'll know more about that in a couple of weeks. I know that Dr. Present mentioned that they're working on a plan so that rapid testing can be a strategy that could assist school districts and communities. So the schedule of our hybrid model, so a hybrid again, every other day, an A/B schedule, but we still want to work on finalizing what a schedule really could look like. And we want to do that based on our staffing and cohort needs. And we're looking at bringing in, convening representatives from each elementary school's instructional leadership team to go over that data and to help us develop and give us input on that hybrid model as we really get it ready to go, hopefully in that beginning part of February. So it's called while it is the ILT members that are being a part of it, it's really a reopening of schools committee that will begin meeting, or that will meet rather next week to discuss the plans. Are we on limited liability?
We are.
Thank you. I want to make really sure that people understand this slide. Many of you, if you were at the last board meeting, we talked about the importance of liability protection for school districts. We were faced with a situation where school districts did not have liability insurance for COVID. There was no insurance that was protecting school districts from litigation. And I'm sure many of you know that this went to a special session and then effective on the 23rd, House Bill 4022 was created. And we all were really excited because it felt like that had been resolved where school districts did receive liability. However, many of us found out this week that as written here, a school would be at risk, a school district would be at risk of losing House Bill 44020 if it were to open for in-person instruction and not be in compliance with OD or the Oregon Health Authority's advisory or mandatory guidance. And so you can see Jim Green's, the OSBA, the Oregon School Board Association's executive director. So it's what's known as PACE. It's our insurance carrier. And, I have a responsibility, and school board members have a responsibility of making sure that we do not put a school district in fiscal jeopardy as a result of not having the appropriate liability protection. And frankly, it not only puts the district at risk, but it also puts all of the school board, myself, in financial risk without the appropriate insurance. And so I know, because superintendents have pushed hard on this, and I know there's some advocacy, obviously, from a lot of voices right now to get this resolved. This is where we are at the moment as of a few days ago. And so I wanted to make sure that I made people aware of this, because this certainly is concerning. So we'll continue to work on that, because there has got to be a way that we can resolve these issues so that, again, people can make an informed decision about the education plan that they would like their child to have during this pandemic. And that's what we'll continue to work on. So I'll certainly take any questions right now. I know that's a lot of information. We are trying, I'll just finish by saying it has been an extraordinarily challenging time, as I'm sure you can imagine, but our entire team is just working as hard as we can to try and put together the best options for our families out there, recognizing that not everybody is going to choose the same option for their students' education. So I'll take questions.
Trip, before we go to questions, I'd like to have Steph.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Stephanie. I apologize. I know, Steph, we wanted you to be able to speak as well.
Just a second. Steph, I'm going to make you a panelist, so if your video is on, we can see you. If not, we'll just we'll hear you. Make it work. All right, Steph, you ready? Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, thank you. Welcome.
Excellent. My name is Stephanie Agar, and I am a 5th grade teacher at Karis Elementary. This is my 16th year working in the Canby School District. I am also the president of the Canby Education Association. In the comments section of a recent social media post of a Canby Current article regarding the reopening of schools, I saw several requests by parents and community members to hear the perspectives of Canby educators in regards to reopening. I appreciate the opportunity to share CEA's thoughts tonight. After reading Governor Brown's December 23rd announcement, my first thought was that this directive ultimately puts school districts, educators, and families in a really tough situation. With each school district now having to navigate reopening schools on their own, I worried about how much it would tear communities apart. As we all know, across the country, the Canby community, and even within the CEA membership, we have drastically different views on what is the best course of action when educating students during a pandemic. As we begin this conversation about how to bring students back into our buildings, along with when to bring them back, I first want us to have a common understanding of what that will look like. Although Governor Brown did change the reopening metrics from mandatory to advisory, the reason for the creation of those metrics has not changed. Additionally, the safety protocols that have been established for schools when providing in-person instruction are still very much being enforced. This means that in-person education in the middle of a pandemic will look drastically different than what kids experienced before school shut down in March. For example, activities where students would typically interact with peers across their grade level will not happen in order to. No longer will be able to sit beside a student, giving them individual attention during work time. No longer will students sit side by side their peers, working in pairs or small groups, because students will need to remain at their desks, spaced at least 6 feet apart. Even with these safety measures, teachers will continue to work tirelessly to transform their teaching, yet again, to provide the highest quality education for their students, just as they have in the connected at-home learning model. But in-person instruction will look different, and families and students should be prepared for that. Furthermore, with the downgrading of the metrics from mandatory to advisory, we are now discussing reopening schools while community spread of the virus remains high. Although schools may not be the super spreading events we were once concerned about, we do know that COVID will be brought into schools. When this happens, there are protocols established in the Ready Schools Safe Learners Guidance that specify what needs to happen regarding isolation and quarantine. For students and families who are sensitive to change, especially with little to no warning, this is another factor when making the decision to return to in-person learning. It is inevitable that some of our students will experience attending school in person one day and the next being required to quarantine for at least a week. Taking effects, I can't blame educators for being scared to spend hours indoors with people outside of their household in poorly ventilated schools with old HVAC systems. Although the old systems are slated to be replaced with the passage of the bond last spring, that job hasn't been completed yet. Although statistically, our students will most likely not be physically impacted by the virus, that doesn't mean they couldn't bring it home to family members. With schools reopening now, there is a real risk of someone getting very sick or worse. In fact, we know the state legislature has planned for this eventuality by passing limited liability legislation to protect schools from coronavirus-related lawsuits. As educators, the last thing we want to do is try to comfort our students through their grief from 6 feet away. A final consideration in regards to health and safety concerns is the development of vaccinations. Governor Brown has prioritized vaccinations for all school staff. it is our understanding that we are at the top of the list in the 1B category after medical professionals and long-term care facilities. Being vaccinated before returning to in-person instruction is the number one thing teachers have said will lessen their health and safety concerns regarding COVID. Seasoned and new teachers alike have reported that this has been one of, if not the most challenging year of their career. And although no one is arguing that connected at-home learning is what's best for all students, I am proud of what teachers and schools have done to make it work as successfully as possible. I am also proud of our parents. I know you didn't sign up for this, but you all have been superheroes in partnering with schools to support your child's education, all while balancing the demands of a pandemic on top of all your previous life responsibilities. But mostly, I'm proud of my students. They show up every day. They have shown incredible flexibility and grace as we tackle tech issues and try new things. I have been touched by the kindness they have shown each other, jumping in quickly to walk each other step by step through any issue. The Canby students who are watching this meeting, I can't imagine what it is like to be in your shoes. I know that every grade level is unique and special in its own way, and this pandemic has robbed you of this grade level experience. It's absolutely not fair, and I don't blame you for wanting to get back to your full school experience as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, the pandemic, with the help of vaccinations to establish herd immunity, is the ultimate decider of when school fully returns to normal. Until then, know that your teachers care about you and will continue to do our best for you. Please note that teachers who have health and safety concerns regarding returning to in-person instruction prior to being vaccinated don't love you any less than teachers who feel comfortable returning right now. Everyone has valid reasons for how they feel regarding the virus, from being in a high-risk category to having lost someone close to them due to the virus. All of your teachers want to be there for you when this pandemic is over. Some just fear if they return now, they won't be around when it is 100% safe to be back in person. Like I said earlier, with the discussion around reopening schools being local, I am highly concerned about communities being torn apart by trying to make this decision when so much is at stake, especially with such differing perspectives. But maybe our diverse opinions will make our reopening plan stronger. Although we know we'll never be able to create a plan that fully meets everyone's needs, we will strive to build a reopening plan that offers multiple ways of educating students while still considering health and safety concerns regarding the pandemic. Whatever the final plan is, teachers look forward to continuing to serve our students to the best of our abilities. And as your union president, I look forward to our continued work with district leadership, building principals, and colleagues as we develop our Canby reopening plan. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Steph.
Thank you, Steph.
So, Trip, I guess I should say first, are there questions from the board? I imagine there are going to be hands popping up all over the place. Tom, you are first.
Thanks, Angie. Trip, can you speak more about the regional approach you touched on earlier, specifically what neighboring superintendents and school districts are thinking, and if anybody's on a different page necessarily than where we're at right now?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I'll approach it from two ways. One, I'll just say personally, I think the regional approach makes so much sense because I've been disappointed with some of the communication that comes from the state, and I'll just be open about that. And so I feel like if we take a regional approach, we may be able to solve some issues sooner than later. We all are facing the same challenges with reopening. There may be districts that are slightly bigger. There are districts that are obviously much smaller. And so, but the reality is it's all about scale. We still have the same issues that we're dealing with. Some districts are looking at a different hybrid model perhaps than we are. So some may look at an AM/PM every other day. And so bringing people together to understand exactly the rationale behind each district's decision is really helpful. As we move forward, and so the regional approach in some ways is really about being able to bring people together to problem solve rather similar issues that we have within moving towards an in-person model. On a just a simple logistical, just something like what's the earliest that you would come back, for example. And regionally, people in our meeting with Dr. President, it was very clear that where we are as a county, it was very clear that going any earlier than where I have it on the 8th, or I know Lake Oswego is looking at, they went out they made a statement about the 4th, but going any earlier than that, there was absolutely no support from that, from the health authorities' perspective. So I could go on and on about different kinds of examples in terms of how we could approach it. I think one thing that people should be aware of is that the size of districts and the size of buildings really makes a difference right now, because we are restricted by cohort in terms of the number of students that we can have in any classroom. And so if you're a district with a very small high school, for example, you might be able to move forward faster than a district that has a large high school. But we would certainly, again, continue to look at what other districts are doing throughout this time. I don't know if that helps, but yeah.
Yeah, thanks. And one more, any idea of the amount of, somebody mentioned, maybe it was Autumn, about training for staff, health staff, probably support staff. Any idea what, how much training, what kind of, is that 2 weeks, or is it a few days? Are they going to be able to do that locally?
I'm hesitant to actually put an amount of time on that at the moment, but I know we have agreed to having teachers come back a full day so they can get their classrooms ready before they would return. And then I know with building principals, we've talked about the need to have staff come back into their buildings and be able to do walkthroughs with regards to things like, let's take a look at social distancing. How are we going to move kids from the moment they arrive at school down to their classroom? What does it look like inside the classroom? What about using the restroom? If there is any kind of a break, what would that look like? So there, I could guess that we would be talking, I would say at least a day, maybe a little more than that. I'm not sure though. I'd hesitate to put a real, time frame on that, but our buildings are ready. I'll give a shout out to Larry Burrich and his team have just been phenomenal all these months. It's not like they've just sat around and waited. They've been really going out into buildings and getting them ready with signage, and classrooms are set up ready to go with the distancing. All of our classes have to have 35-foot distancing around desks. And so that's all been taken care of. So it's just, again, it just would be walking through and making sure that our staff members really feel comfortable and confident about what they're going to be asked to do. One thing I should point out too, and again, we're talking about K-3 to start, right? And so those cohort numbers really are about anywhere from, no more than I would imagine 15 students, but I would imagine probably in that 10 to 12 range in a classroom. And so, when students arrive and their cohort is only, say, 10 students, we're going to take a look at how can we stagger starts where, we would meet those students and walk them down to their classroom. And, there shouldn't be any kind of situations where groups of kids would be intermingling, right? Because those numbers are reasonable enough where we should be able to keep a small group of kids like that contained in their classrooms. So, but those are the kinds of things people, we hired new health assistants, and we're required by the guidelines to have what they call an isolation room in the event that a student has any kinds of symptoms. And so we have some additional health aides that would monitor that and be in charge of that room. And it would be important for our staff members to know what to look for, where that room is, what's the procedure in terms and protocols in terms of getting students, to the room, things like that.
Tom, I can just tell you real quick, based on our conversation with Dr. Present the other day around the rapid test, that will obviously require some sort of training. She made it very clear that that is an Oregon Health Authority initiative, and it would not be run by Clackamas County Public Health. So the training around that concerns me, that it's going to be the state level thing, and how does that push down to districts. So I'm really hoping that in that news conference tomorrow, we get a little bit more information about what we're going to be required to do, how often. We have some actual legal questions around it. So I'm hoping that we get some of that clarification on that level of testing, on training for those tests.
Do you believe the training will be for all staff or just certain?
I do not believe it will be for all staff. I think it will be for our health staff and maybe a few other additional identified individuals, kind of like we do, EpiPen training, those kinds of things.
But I assume that we're going to have to do some kind of a basic training for all of our staff, the protocols that we expect out of them, correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, and I'll jump on that as well. Absolutely, because that's one of the things that Dr. Present really emphasized, and that is if schools really, again, adhere to the guidelines that have been set forth, and you really are steadfast, like you absolutely have to do that. Schools or school districts that have relaxed in any way, that's where you potentially have problems. And Steph, I don't know if I've missed anything that you might have remembered with regards to some of the training conversations that I know we've touched upon in the past.
No, I think you've really captured it, right? There's the one day that's more like the teachers coming in, setting up their rooms, a chance to, talk to their colleagues around, okay, like what are we, transitioning, educationally speaking, I guess, curriculum wise.
Yeah.
And then that our trainings, right, that are more protocol based will need to be in addition to that.
Okay, thanks. That's it for now. I might have more later.
Thanks, Tom. Mike.
Thank you. I guess this is probably more of a summary than a question and a statement. I sincerely appreciate the idea of giving parents an option. And the way I understand it, and I want to make sure it's clear, we're targeting February 8th K-3 startup at a hybrid model. Parents have the option to do that. They have the option to continue with the online learning, and they have the option now to do the hybrid online learning. What was the third option?
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Did you hear me, Trip?
Yes. Let me just kind of walk you through a little bit. And again, I want to emphasize that I'm saying that it's a goal, and I think we need to still be able to recognize that there are a number of things that we are going to have to satisfy. Again, with the January 19th new guidelines, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen, but so we're getting ready to be able to hopefully move forward that week. And the three options currently right now, we have families that have elected to be in a self-paced, kind of an independent program,
Right.
COLA, we call it, right? It's like Canby Online Learning Academy that has, little connection with a day-to-day teacher, for example. Then we have our comprehensive distance learning, which you know well because you've been helping, right, with your grandkids. And so we want to make sure that parents have the opportunity to stay in that kind of a program in the event that they are making their personal decision that they don't want to come back to in person at this moment. Because the reality is we got to get through, this pandemic, and we got to get to June, and we've got to try and put together the best possible programs for our families to make an informed decision around. And we feel strongly, not only is it a requirement by ODE to keep comprehensive distance learning, we believe that's the right thing to do for our families right now.
And Mike, I muted you not because I didn't want you to talk anymore, but there was just an echo. So if you have more to say, you're welcome to unmute.
Thank you. I totally agree with that. And so we have the comprehensive learning, the way it is right now, hybrid, and then the COLA program. So parents have an option based on their comfort level. Now, the other question I have, and this would be probably between more of you and the association, is how are we going to work out whether the classroom teacher is comfortable coming back into that situation?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Mike. And I think that's really why.
Yeah.
Mike, I think that there's a lag on your end. I'm going to turn off, let's see if I can do it. I'm going to turn off your video because I think that might, see if it works just to help with the sound for a minute. Is that okay? All right, Mike, you want to try talking again to see if we can hear you a little better?
Okay, the way
oh, so much better. Okay.
Good? Okay, thank you. All right, we have the comprehensive distance learning, just like what we're doing now, and anybody listening outside.
Yeah, again, the goal is the week of February 8th.
Right.
And then, you're asking the question, about staff members. And that's why the survey of our parents is so important. Parents have until Wednesday to fill it out because that really impacts how we'll staff our buildings. And so it could very well be where, we will require some additional support to be able to provide that comprehensive distance learning program, right? So there could be teachers that would obviously be needed to be able to provide continued support for the CDL program. So, our hope is that we'll be able to staff really appropriately because we'll have staff members that, may wish to stay in CDL and those that'll want to come back in person. And, we're hopeful that somehow the numbers will fall in place the right way. I don't know yet, but that's our hope.
Well, I appreciate it. And like I said before, we need to start somewhere. We need to take that first step. And I think this is it. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Mike,
Morning.
I'm going to turn your video back on in case you want to, make sure you're visible. No, that part's done. I have Sarah and then Dawn after.
Thank you.
Okay, I think Mike's echo's gone, so I'll start. So appreciate you walking through all of that with us, Trip. I know this is a really complicated situation to continually navigate. That's changing all the time. I appreciate your commitment to move forward, even though it keeps changing. I know that's really difficult. I really, kind of reiterating what Mike said, I think, and based on even what we've heard tonight and what I think we've all heard over the course of the last 9 months, that the distance learning is working for some people, but others, kids are really struggling detrimentally. So I appreciate providing choices. We've heard that some staff are ready to come back and some staff aren't. So I think that giving people options in a timely manner, based on the best that we can do, and all of us being really mindful of the information we have as we move forward to make decisions, is going to be really important as we move forward. One question that I had, I know that some schools have started moving forward with holding classes in person in Oregon. And I'm curious if you've, I know they're not in our specific region, but some of them are not too far away. I know you meet locally with your regional superintendents, but have you reached out, or others reached out to those superintendents who have opened to kind of see, what worked, what didn't work, what they needed to maybe think through or would have done differently, just to help us be better prepared as we start making those steps forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great comment and question, Sarah. We meet weekly with what's known as it's called Off the Record, and that's where all superintendents in Oregon have a weekly meeting with Colt Gill, and that's where people are able to talk about kind of their experiences, if you will, with what they're doing in their school districts, what their concerns are, what again, what they've been able to accomplish or not. And I think much of those conversations really led to, obviously, it influences some of the decisions that are being made at the state level. Recently at the ESD, there was a panel discussion that was put together with administrators from all over the country, where there's been, so for example, Arizona, places where they have open schools, and then, what were their experiences? And I don't know if there is any principal who is on right now who was at that ESD panel meeting that wants to comment on it, but I think it was eye-opening.
If not, I was there. I could talk to that too, if no one else is available.
But they, we've heard that, there are issues all over the country where you open and then you have to close down as a result of, cases, and cohorts have to be pulled out. And, it's like, it can be a little bit of a revolving door. I know I have a family back east, and talking with them, they talk about how that's become part of the norm for them, but they continue to have their school open, but they know that there's going to be times where they're going to be home back in comprehensive distance learning. And so I don't know if you want to share anything from the panelists, Autumn, in terms of what you heard.
I think just a couple of the big takeaways were, one, they really had all their health and safety precautions kind of dialed in before they started. They were really clear with their parents around the expectations. That I think the biggest thing that came up that kind of gave us pause and gave us some things we needed to think about was, some districts have had to close entirely because they're out of staff, because they've been sick. And so they really made it clear you need to plan for those scenarios as best as you can. In an ideal world, if there's an exposure, we have a teacher who's has to be at home but is feeling well and can continue with distance learning. But we might have a teacher that gets sick, and we might have a few teachers that get sick, and we don't have any, subs available. And so it really comes down to a labor issue at that point. And so they advised really making sure that we had strong plans about kind of going in and out of distance learning, because that's going to happen in this process for whether it's one cohort, two cohorts, a whole grade level, a building, that is a possibility. And so that's something that we definitely have been talking through. And Yvonne and Michelle and Kathy all, I don't know if I captured that, but they were all there as well.
Yeah, Michelle, you might want to jump in and talk about it from a staffing.
Yeah, I think the substitute part is the most challenging. And I'll just say here in Connected at Home, we've had very few substitutes who are willing and interested in being a Connected at Home sub, because you have to really know the technology. You've got to be familiar with the apps. We have to give you, they have to be trained, and we have to give them access. And so it's been pretty complex, but we've done it in situations where we know we've had these more long-term subs. And so we do have a few that are trained and able to do it. I think we'll have more subs willing, hopefully, when we go to in-person. But again, we've reached out to our subs. We've posted a substitute pool and an IA pool, because we know that a lot of our subs are retirees. And so we're not sure that we're going to get a whole lot interested, for this time to come in person. So that's something that we're working on. But I will say the biggest issue, I believe, is that Connected at Home. So if we were to have, having subs who are willing to do that part. And so we'll have to be flexible. We've got staff that have jumped in a day's situation, current staff that aren't classroom teachers. So we've been navigating it, but I will say that is an area that we're just going to have to be really prepared for. And we're really trying to increase and identify who are subs that are willing to come in.
And I'll just add one more thing, Sarah. I think, I'm going to remain optimistic about the fact that if we, again, put a plan together that really takes into account what science tells us with regards to prevention, and where we make sure that we have guidelines in place that people really, again, steadfastly adhere to, that, we owe it to try and move forward. And I think that's clearly when we see, the date of February 15th that was put out there. It really was about, we need to get our youngest students in school by this date and begin to build on success, hopefully at that level, so that we can continue to increase opportunities for more kids to come back to school. And I'll also say that I think there are examples where people in much smaller districts have had success, right? Where they feel like it's gone relatively well, but it's a much smaller school district where they don't have the numbers that we do. But again, we're dealing with small groups of kids when we're talking about K-3 to start. So that should give us a little hope that we may be able to put a really good plan together. And I like the way Stephanie ended her comments around, maybe the diversity and the different thinking is going to help us come to a really strong plan as we move forward.
Thanks, Trip. I appreciate all of your work on this and giving folks choices to make. I know it's difficult and ever changing. So thanks for your work on it.
Absolutely.
Dawn, you are up next.
Thank you. Trip, thank you for giving the parents a choice. I think that that's really important. And tonight when we listened to the statements, we heard, I would say about 50-50 for the parents who are kind of nervous about their students going back to school or the schools reopening.
Yeah.
All of the kids were for it. And I would say that the majority of the teachers were not real excited. I mean, they're excited for school to start, but of course nervous of the risks. So I'm wondering how you're going to be able to handle that and I know you probably touched a little bit of this one with Mike asking, but really the same question is, what happens if you have some teachers who have some underlying conditions and they're concerned about coming back to school? How are you going to handle that based on just what we heard tonight with more teachers in opposition than for, I really feel, I get a sense everybody wants the schools to open, so don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but at the same time, how are we going to handle that if there's some underlying conditions or they're not comfortable coming back?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll go back all the way prior to the closure of schools in March. we reached out to CEA leadership and OSCA leadership and met with them and talked about, Michelle, myself, we met and just, I felt strongly and still do that we have to make sure that we have the well-being of our staff, as part of this equation. And so way back when it first started, we met and talked about if there is someone that has symptoms or if someone has to quarantine, let's put things in together where they feel supported, right? Where they're not taking the brunt of sick leave and those kinds of things, because this was such an unknown, virus that all of a sudden it was appearing. And we had no clue at that time that it would turn into what it's turned into. But I say all that because, I just, again, I feel strongly that the welfare of our staff is really, really important. And so getting to your question, and I'll let Michelle come into it as well. We have already reached out to staff members and asked staff members if they have any concerns or risks that they need to let us know about. And so Michelle has been reaching out, going back to really, I would say last spring when we closed down and began to reach out to staff members or solicit information from staff members about, look, if we were to go into hybrid, are you concerned about coming back? And that puts us in a place where then we are going to do everything we can within, our powers to provide them an opportunity to stay connected to our district and our work. And so, Michelle, do you want to talk a little bit about the steps that we've taken there?
Michelle, before you jump in, I just want to say that that's part of the reason we asked Steph to come and sit in on the panel tonight, because I've heard from board members, community members, everyone, obviously the teachers are at the center of all of this with the kids. So, we're trying to make sure we are demonstrating the partnership that we sort of have with them, and we appreciate. They, like you said, I think lots of teachers, everyone wants to be back. We all want normal. It's just the process to get there. So I just wanted to explain. I don't think I did a very good job in the beginning of explaining why we invited Steph to join. Now, Michelle, go ahead.
Sure. So we did reach out to all staff back in July initially about concerns. Yes, I would be requesting a workplace accommodation. So what that means is we have to take a look at what the model is going to look like based on how many kids want to come back. And then hopefully what will happen is we're going to have to shift people's assignments. So if we do have teachers that have a serious health condition and cannot come in, then we're going to try and have them be working from home, doing connected at home. And those teachers who can come in will be coming in. So ideally, it all works out, but it may be that there are some teachers who end up taking a leave of absence. We may have to hire temp teachers. We just don't quite know, but we're prepared for that. And we have a good idea about the staffing at this point.
Thank you for that. I was really wondering along the lines of if you would have to hire teachers. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dawn.
Are there other questions, comments from the board at this point?
I will say too, when you ask about hiring, it just brought to mind that I know in the meeting with Colt Gill the other day, I know there is more federal funding coming to school districts to help support us during this time. And it sounds like it's more than we received last time. And so, hopefully, again, we'll be in a...
This is, we can't minimize this. This is a big lift. It's going to take an incredible amount of leadership and quite honestly, courage by Tripp and his team, by Stephanie Agar and her team, by our building leaders. It's going to take a lot of work. So we need to acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge that Tripp is giving family choices. I think that's important. I think a lot of you have pointed that out. I also want to acknowledge, Michelle just touched on it, that the staffing is going to have some choices too. I think that's important. We need to listen to the concerns, try to mitigate those concerns. If we can't, then we need to adjust accordingly to staff our buildings and our online learning accordingly. So anyways, I just want to make that statement and thank everybody for their work. And I know it's a big lift coming up, but thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
I was going to say, I think you might have just summarized the board, sort of how we all seem to be feeling. So thank you, Tom. Other comments, questions from the board before we wrap this up? All right. Well, yeah, I won't try to say it as well as Tom did, but especially the idea of how much, like the logistics of this alone. I mean, I think running a Zoom meeting with a few people is kind of hard. Logistics you're talking about are a totally different ballgame. So thank you to everyone for the ongoing hard work. Maybe in like, I don't know, a few months, you could like take a nap. I don't know, maybe. But thank you for all of your work. And Steph, I'm gonna move you back over to the other thing. Didn't want you to think we were
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Steph.
Sorry, I'm trying to get this thing to work. Okay. We will move on to item 5.3, approval of the transportation contract, which is with STA. Denise.
Deadline. Tripp and I have had numerous conversations with Will, who's our regional manager, and we took the time to make sure that we talked to there's 4 other districts in Oregon that STA services right now to really look at what they have in their contracts as far as provisions for, do they use, 2 of them use a CPI and 2 of them have a flat percentage like we have. So the last 4 years, we've had an increase of 3% that we've done on that contract. So as you can see, what we have in there, our proposal is to go to a CPI model. Using the CPI. So they realized that and agreed with our proposal. They realized that and agreed with our proposal to go with this new negotiated amount. I must say that I do appreciate their work and understanding during this pandemic. It's been hard when they've probably only had about half of their bus drivers actually employed. So that's been difficult for them, but they've really appreciated being able to take meals to the kids and still be involved in any ways that they can. So they're most excited for when we can start transporting kids back to school because they miss those kiddos. So anyhow, I don't know if anyone had any specific questions about what was presented. Be happy to answer any of those for you.
Spoke too soon. I was watching Tom. I was like, spoke too soon. I was watching Tom. I was like, I think he's like gonna jump into the double dutch, but I'm not quite sure. Go ahead, Tom.
Denise, did I hear you say the ceiling on our increase would be 3%? Is that correct?
It would be a 3%. That's the most it could go up to. It doesn't have a floor. So if the CPIU was at 0.5, that's all they would get. So
right now, you said the average is somewhere in the 1.5-ish range.
It's 1.6 right now. And the other 2 districts that actually have a set amount, they're at 2.5%. So, and then one district didn't get back to me, but like Tiger Tualatin, they don't have a floor on their CPIU either. So that's kind of the model we went with. We felt that was more, at this point in time, the most effective model to look at. But we wanted to make sure they couldn't go too high if for some reason the CPIU went higher. So.
And when is that rate set? At what time of the year? Obviously.
So it probably get released in the next month. So right now they've already published the November rates. So I would assume within the next month and a half, we'll know what that rate's going to be for this coming year. But they've published all the other 11 months, and then they do an annual average. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Tom, anyone else? All right, well, we need to vote on this tonight. So is there someone willing to ready to make a motion?
I move to approve resolution 2020-21/008 of contract extension for student America as presented.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the transportation contract renewal for SBA as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Cameron, please call the roll.
Stephanie?
Aye.
John? Aye. Sarah? Tom?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And Angie?
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, we are to item 5.4, Superintendent's mid-year review timeline. Sorry, the ambulance is going by. Or I guess it's fire truck. And I'm actually gonna kick it over to Sarah. She is gonna lead us through how the process is gonna work. And since it is very clear that I need help in that, I just want to say thank you to Dawn for your help in the fall, and then also Sarah for your willingness to jump in. So I'll turn it over to you, Sarah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Angie. So as we've talked before about the performance review, we're trying to stay on track this year. And what we talked about before, I know we missed that deadline for the last year's performance review amidst everything that was happening. So and Angie and I had talked a little bit about how we move forward from here, and I've talked to Dawn as well, and just the process wise, what just want to reiterate with everyone to make sure we're all on the same page. We're getting to the point where we would normally do that mid-year check-in, and I think that's kind of where we're at now and how we want to move forward using the template that Dawn helped put together with the goals for this year. And those of you who've done this probably more than I have in the past too, please feel free to jump in. But what we had talked about was this mid-year check-in would be not going through that template and the goals and providing feedback and guidance on, are we off track? Are we on track? Are we heading in the right direction? It's more of a cursory overview of the performance, and then that's used in preparation for the final evaluation, which would be later in the calendar year. So if everyone feels really comfortable with that, we also talked about, because we did miss some big things last year in providing feedback, which was the SSA process, the bond initial process, although there is bond work happening now, that we would provide an opportunity for all of us to provide feedback on those things that aren't necessarily still part of this year's work, so that we don't miss those. So that is something that we can do as a board, is to provide that feedback, those comments as part of the process. It would simply not be part of the evaluation criteria within the template we're using for this year. So I just wanted to make sure we kind of walk through that a little bit and make sure we're all feeling on track with where we are and how we're moving forward with the process. And again, if those of you who've done this before, feel free to chime in on how we should be moving forward this year. I know it's a little bit different.
Thanks, Sarah. Rob?
Yeah, thank you to all of you for helping to coordinate that. Do you have a sense of like the start and the stop time, the process for both the mid-year and the final. I know in the past, we've not been very good about doing both. They usually tends to take longer than we anticipate. So when would you anticipate we would start and then target providing Trip the actual feedback for the mid-year, and then start the annual review and end it? Because I know in the past, it's at times it's taken a couple months to go through the process.
Right. Well, we were hoping to start the mid-year process now. Dawn did a great job of putting together a really thorough template. So our next step it was partially for last year, so we're trying to adapt for this year. So when we give that to you all to do a final check off, does this work for everyone? And then provide that to Trip to use as an overview as he puts together that mid-year. Angie and I talked today too, because you're right. I feel like it's hard to track on the timing and making sure we're on track about even just checking in with Michelle. And Michelle, if you have any input on that, we would appreciate it, just to, and right now too, Angie and I really did talk about, we all feel like this is important. We want to make sure we stay on track, but we also know there's a lot happening, as we just talked about, that takes a lot of time and energy for Trip. And though we don't want to lose the importance of the performance review, we also know that this is a time we need to be aware of the additional time this takes when there's a lot going on. So, Michelle, if there's any input you have on the timing for us, I think that would be super helpful as well.
Well, I can jump in, Michelle, before you do, and just say that I think we sort of have a loose target of I feel like I should knock on 43,000 pieces of wood before I say what I'm about to say, but potentially in our in-person meeting, the first meeting in February, that we would be by then giving, this may be a little bit ambitious, but giving Trip the feedback for the mid-year, and then, sort of finalizing a timeline that would get us to actually making sure it's done by the end of the year. So just, that's sort of what I've been kicking around in terms of timing, the short term. And Michelle?
And I would just say that, per his contract, it's the final evaluations due by June 1st. So that helps you go between the mid-year and the final June 1st, and I'm happy to also send you a timeline that I've put together in the past.
I think we're going to recruit you to help us figure this out.
Yeah, Michelle, if you don't mind sending all of us that timeline, I think that would be really helpful. And then Angie and I have committed to working, Dawn already did the bulk of the work, but just refining what she did for this fiscal year. And then getting that out to you all so you can take a look at that, and then we can provide it to Trip. And then hopefully, like Angie said, if get that feedback from him when we hopefully are able to meet in person at some point in February.
All right. Well, thanks again, Sarah. I very much appreciate. As I said when I retained the gavel, I guess, this is the beginning of my busy season with the session starting next week and the getting really serious week after. So I very much appreciate I'm starting to think of her as my co-chair because I'm going to be relying on her a lot, I think, as we go forward. So thank you. Thank you for that. All right, we are to item 6.0, future agenda items. I wanted to make sure everyone remembers or knows that the audit presentation is the next meeting, and Denise will help you can do a hard copy or an electronic copy if you haven't already. Make sure that you sort of figure out how you want to receive the information. It's a giant book. There will be a quiz. But yeah, so just reach out to Denise when you know how you want to receive the information. Mike.
Yes, on future items, during the return to school planning update, Last board workshop or board meeting, we talked about requiring or not requiring students to have the videos on. And I really appreciated Patrick's research on that. And I know, Tripp, you and I have been communicating. So if you can kind of give us an update at the next board meeting, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, that would be fine, Mike. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mike? Are there any others? All right, looking at the upcoming meetings, on behalf of Mike, maintaining his very, very, very stellar and long track record of being married. His anniversary, as he's mentioned before, is on June 17th. So we're hoping to move the meeting that day either to another day that week, or we could move it, I guess maybe the last Thursday of the month. I haven't looked at a calendar. But I just want to check in with folks and see, do you have a strong preference? Is it better to keep it a Thursday and just move it a week? Or do you prefer finding a different day in that same week? And if you don't have strong preferences, that's fine, and we'll just figure it out.
Can I present another option? The planning workshop during the day, that's from 12 to 5. Can we move that to June 3rd?
I guess it feels to me like that's usually where it's sort of the last hurrah before summer. Remember that thing we used to have that was the summer once upon a time? I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion. Dawn, looks like you have a...
Yeah, I was going to say that I'm not available on Wednesdays.
Okay. Well, how about this? Mike, we'll figure out if that, I had just been thinking about moving the whole chunk of time. So we'll not do Wednesdays for sure. And then we'll figure out if there's a different day we could do the planning session. All right, good of the order. Anything else anyone has?
Something real quick, Angie. I just want to acknowledge Angie's work as our chair. I've never ran a Zoom or want to. I've been part of way too many, and I know that all of you have. But I can imagine it's difficult sitting and doing what she's doing. And Sarah might get an idea here in the not too distant future. Thanks, Angie, for what you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks. I mean, the good part is it makes meetings go really fast because I'm doing so many things. So I sometimes have to ask Tripp after the fact, did you say this? Because I think that's what I heard, but I was also, no, I appreciate that very much, Tom. It's an honor both to serve and to serve as chair. So, and I do all for your time, and thanks to all of the community members who participated. It's a very difficult time, but I think, I'm sorry, Dawn, do you have your hand up to, okay. I just panicked. I was like, oh no, I didn't mean to end without calling on you. But it's a tough time for all of us. And I know that we all want the best for our kids, so we'll keep trying. Thank you all, and we will talk to you soon. Have a good night. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Have a good night.